So we're finally starting to see the first grading reports come back from PSA on all the 25 Topps Chrome cards. And much like we thought, dude, much like we thought with all the reports of damage to cards with lipping, surface scratches, and whatnot, we thought these were going to be hard to gem, and they are. So let's take a quick look at the prop reports that have came in and what that means for you if you haven't sent your cards in yet, and how we can use some of this data to determine pricing and strategies for buying and selling. So let's go over to the screen share here. And let's take a look at some of these cards, right? So if you can see, we have some Sapphire cards, but we're really just going to look at the base Topps Chrome and all of the other inserts and autos that we have. Okay, so we got 51 here, and I already broke down some of this, so I'm just going to quickly go through. And again, check this out yourself. So here we have the 10 column. Here we have total cards. Here we have 9, right? And let's go down. We've got, you know, a few here in the inserts. We've got none on the Chrome Rookie. We got none on the Chrome Vet. Fired Up, none. Fists of Fury, none. Got a few on the Future Stars. We got a lot on the Helix, which we'll talk about in a little bit. A lot on the Hidden Gems, a lot on the Kings and Queens. Let's go. Marks of a Champion have a couple on the autos, but again, not a very good gem right there. None Mission Control, one here, one there, right? As we go down, kind of a similar story here as we go down. Decent amount on the Titans and all the way down here. Okay, so let me go back to the solo view here, and I'll just give you a quick breakdown of the pop report. So there's 184 total Topps Chrome cards graded. The base cards were 6 out of 50 had a gem rate, right? 6 out of 50 got a 10. That is a 12% gem rate. That is terrible, dude. That is terrible. Honestly, not sure why this is so low. Maybe it was the first cards that got sent through the machines. And since there was, you know, uniform damage and wear on some of the cards, I would suspect that maybe these were the first ones to go through before they got fixed, because as we're going to look at, that is one of the lowest gem rates of any of the type of cards that we just looked at. But of the inserts, 61 total graded. Of the inserts, 69% noise were gem rate. So 42 of 61 of the inserts were gems. Now that is solid, and to me that tells me if I had a base card and I looked at it, you know, and there was a little bit of issues there, maybe you don't send that in. Maybe you don't send that in with a 12% gem rate if your goal is to try and flip, which we'll talk about strategies later. But if you do have an insert, so far we see a 70% gem rate with these inserts. That is pretty solid, man. So if your insert looks good, maybe that is something that you could potentially send in. Now, why the discrepancy here between the inserts and the other ones? Not sure. We can talk about that in a second as well. On the autos, 75 total graded autos, 7 of 75 gemmed. That is a 9% gem rate, dude. That is a 9% gem rate on all of the autos that we just looked at. And to me, all of these numbers are like really significant, right? We're talking about 12% and 9% gem rate on the autos and the base versus a 70% gem rate on the inserts. Like, to me, 70% gem rate would be a risk that I'm willing to take depending on how big the card is. So, you know, if you have case hits, if you have other like big numbered inserts, you know, that look good under the light, seem clean, could be a much higher percentage and a much higher likelihood that you could get a 10 on those. As far as the data looks, like they were maybe either separated in the manufacturing process, right? Like the base card and the autos are so low comparatively to the inserts. And to me, it kind of makes sense with the autos, right? Because we have a lot of uniform issues, a lot of uniformed damage issues, and we'll go here. And maybe it had to do with how these were printed, right? So like we have the lipping here on the bottom, the lipping here on the bottom, the lipping here on the bottom. And that was kind of an issue that we saw with a lot of different people through this. And maybe that was a manufacturing issue with the printing press, you know, and these are all on, most of them are on cards, right? So that means they get packaged, they get sent to the fighter. Fighter has to sign them all. And we know they're not super careful, right? Shuffling cards, messing with them, throwing them around or whatever. Then they get packaged back, sent back, shipped it back to Topps, and then unloaded and sorted into packs. So there's a huge process, a lot more steps. To me, it makes sense why the autos are going to be a low gem rate. Now, the base cards, dude, the only thing I could think of why that is so low is literally just the printing press was not set up right or something. And whenever they shuffled all those cards through to get manufactured, there was just an issue there. And the QC was, you know, a fundamental issue with the actual setup of the printing press. If you're enjoying these videos, hit that like button, subscribe, and think about joining the B.A.T crew. All the support helps so much. Thanks for watching. All right, so how is this going to affect our buying of 25 Topps Chrome? So personally, I've kind of shied away from buying 25 Chrome specifically for these reasons, right? And while I'm not a huge stickler of having just PSA 10s in my collection, I don't really like having PSA 8s in my collection. So because of that, I haven't really been buying singles off eBay, just knowing how rough some of these cards are, right? And like here was a look at what I actually pulled this card in one of my boxes, and like big print line scratched down the middle. I don't know how that's gonna grade, right? If I did potentially want to grade that, I ended up selling it to the guy, disclosed it in the eBay listing. But like that's kind of some of the stuff that you could expect with these cards. I don't know if everybody's going to be forthright and tell you that there are damage to these cards. So I'm pretty leery of buying these on eBay right now. But as these continue to come out in the market, to me, I would let other people pay for grading fees, right? If you're a person and you're a collector that you really like having all of your stuff graded, you want to buy cards that are graded 9s, 10s, whatever, I would just wait, man. Go after these cards once they're out there on the market and you already have the grade that you want attached to that card without having to do any of that legwork. Also, when it comes to buying, this made me think like, okay, we're seeing, a ton of 8s and even some below, right? We're seeing, some 9s, and then we're seeing very few 10s. This made me think like, well, I don't mind PSA 9s, especially if, the pop report is pretty spread out. So I was like, this could be good news if you are a collector that doesn't mind PSA 9s. As we've seen in the past, sometimes the 9 is equal to raw cards in pricing. And I am very curious to see if that trend continues with 25 Topps Chrome UFC. If it does, I will be buying up a lot of PSA 9s because from these pop reports, they do seem to be somewhat rare. They're not even close to as rare as the 10s, right? But I do think if the trends stay the same, getting a 9 or a 10 is going to be, quite the differentiation between grades over time. And I had another interesting thought where if you are, you do have a really clean copy, you decide to send it off, it does come back a 10. I think we could be almost seeing an instance where, the 10s are very drastic and almost like vintage cards where you see a ton of 7 and 8, and then, you see a decent amount of 9s. But you see very few 10s, and this is speculation, right? But I do think it's important to kind of try and think about how this could be in the future in order to kind of come up with some like buying strategies and selling strategies right now when it comes to differentiation in these pop reports. And I do think if you have a 10, right, like it could be almost like vintage where very, very, very few are 10s. And in my opinion, if I had that and I was selling, I would probably want quite a premium on that, quite a premium on the PSA 10. And when thinking of like how much more are people going to spend potentially for, a gem, I think with the psychology around this product and with what we know about the fit and finish and the quality control issues, I think we could actually get quite the multiplier on these PSA 10s. Now, again, we are speculating. Who knows? Maybe a lot of the pop report, as it continues to grow, we're going to see more fill in on those 10s. But for now, if this trend continues, I think, we could be looking at like a 3x or more multiplier depending on how these reports continue to play out. All right, so timing the market. This one was really tough for me. So it's like, should you send your cards in right now, or should you wait until, more pop reports continue to settle and kind of make, a better conclusion once we have more data? I think this is a tough one to answer. I would be on the cautious side of this, and I would probably continue to wait and see what happens. Unless you have a super clean card, and especially a super clean insert, because again, we know that's like a 70% gem rate already. I would probably hold off, thinking that the highest probability is going to be you getting a card back within the ranges that we've seen already on these pop reports. Now, maybe our early PSA 10 is going to command a huge premium because of scarcity before, potentially more come out. That could definitely be the case. But if you've already sent in the cards and you got back gems, congrats, dude. But I would probably be really aggressive with the pricing because, again, from what we've seen, you could have some serious leverage as a seller with the numbers that we're looking at because there probably are going to be very few. And there's already some on eBay, so let's check those out, right? We got a lot of inserts that were 10s on that pop report. We got Kings and Queens there. Titans 8. We got Taporia 8. Is that a 101? Oh, a 10. Oh, yeah, black is up 10 now. We got the of 50s a 9. PSA 10 on the auto there. That's nice. We got 8, 10. Again, insert, right? 9, 9, 9. We got auto 8. See, this one, they didn't even want to get the actual condition of the card graded, probably because it was so bad. 9. We got a 10 there. Again, insert. 9. Got I think this one was 8. Got 10, insert. 9, 9, 9. Got a PSA 10 there. That's a rare one. 10, insert. And ooh, that's real rare. PSA 10 on that. So again, as we like, there's just not going to be a lot of gems. This is rare. This is different from what we've seen with other modern cards in the past, right? Normally, you would expect modern card going to be a lot of 9s, going to be, you know, a lot of 10s. Anything below a 9, you know, is usually like you're kind of surprised with these modern cards. This is not the case with Topps Chrome. That's why I wanted to make this video. But again, we've really just been talking about like people that are potentially flipping, people that are potentially, you know, trying to find value in grading and then selling. But for PC cards, right? Is it smarter to hold these cards raw if you're not looking to sell? Again, kind of a tough question to answer, and it's hugely dependent on opinions, right? What are your tastes when it comes to your PC? Do you have to have things graded? Are you fine with having raw cards in your collection? There are definitely cards that I have that I'm going to keep in a one touch because of the fear of the grade coming back low, because of, you know, noticeable damage that I've seen. I don't really need to have graded cards in my collection, and especially I don't necessarily like PSA 8s in my collection or below unless they're vintage. But I think personally going after 9s might be the play for PC cards from this era, from 2025 Chrome. To me, that's a good mix of rarity within the pop reports, and at least we're speculating on that right now, right? But as what we've seen today, I do think that to probably continue to be the case. And if you do enjoy having graded cards in your display, you know the grading fee has already been taken care of. The work is already done, and you shouldn't necessarily have to pay much of a premium for a 9, which, as we know from what we've seen, is a really good quality card and probably is going to have some rarity in the pop report. And for PC autos, you can always just authenticate, right? You can always authenticate. You can even get the auto grade or the actual auto graded, not get the card condition graded, and that could potentially, you know, have you with a 10 somewhere on there, depending on what that auto looks like. It will be in a slab. And then, you know, you don't have the condition associated with it. But that's definitely an option for anybody out there who's looking to, you know, do that with their PC, get it encapsulated, get some type of authentication on it, but not, you know, having a grade associated with it if you're not really trying to flip. If you like UFC cards, you're going to like my channel. So check out these videos over here and subscribe for more videos just like this.